Did you know that when a man experiences a massive betrayal, the individual who looks the most calm, silent, and unaffected on the outside is often the one facing the most dangerous psychological collapse on the inside? In the study of human relationship psychology, there is a very deep and hidden behavioral trend that happens when a person tries to use an extreme form of silence, often called stoicism, to handle the trauma of cheating. Many men believe that when their trust is broken in a marriage or a long-term partnership, the ultimate sign of strength is to lock their jaw, absorb the pain without speaking, and pretend that nothing can hurt their feelings. However, behavioral data suggests that this total suppression of emotion is not true strength. Instead, it creates an intense internal pressure cooker. The mind cannot simply erase a major emotional injury. It merely buries it alive. When a man hides his agony behind a mask of cold silence, his subconscious mind begins to experience a silent mental health crisis that destroys his sleep, ruins his career focus, and breaks down his physical health long before anyone notices he is hurting. Studying this hidden crisis is not about complaining or looking for pity. It is about analyzing relationship dynamics with total honesty so you can see the difference between healthy emotional control and dangerous self-destruction, allowing you to protect your mind and build real internal power. Today, we are going to look closely at the mental health crisis hidden behind a man's silence after an act of cheating. We will analyze how emotional isolation damages your internal baseline, why a fake show of strength delays true healing, and how to spot the hidden behavioral tendencies that show a man is drowning in quiet trauma while trying to look perfectly stable to the outside world. Most people see what happened. Few stop to understand why it happened. If you're here to think deeper, question assumptions, and see beyond the surface, you're in the right place. Subscribe and join the conversation, because better understanding leads to better decisions. To truly understand how a hidden mental health crisis develops behind a calm face, we must first look at a psychological concept known as the pressure trap. When a man discovers that his partner has broken their shared vows, his body immediately releases a massive wave of stress chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline. This is a natural human reaction to a deep psychological attack. Behavioral trends indicate that if a man allows himself to process the stress logically, by speaking to a trusted professional, setting firm legal boundaries, or taking time away to clear his head, the chemicals eventually leave his body. However, when a man chooses to act completely unaffected, pretending that he is too tough to feel pain, he forces those stress chemicals to remain locked inside his physical body. The subconscious mind becomes trapped in a loop of constant alert, causing the man to experience random bursts of high anxiety, unexplained muscle tension, and a severe loss of appetite, all while he tells his friends that everything is completely under control. The second major behavioral trend to study within this dynamic is a pattern called the false mastery illusion. In relationship psychology, true emotional mastery means that you feel a heavy emotion, analyze it with logic, and make a conscious choice on how to act with self-respect. But many men mistake emotional numbness for emotional intelligence. They stay in the same house with an unfaithful partner, witness daily reminders of the betrayal, and use a cold, robotic attitude to protect themselves. Psychological trends show that this false mastery creates a massive internal division. On the outside, the man looks organized and silent, but on the inside, his mind is constantly replaying past conversations, checking text message timestamps, and searching for hidden meanings in every word his partner says. This behavioral tendency eventually leads to deep mental exhaustion because no human being can run a continuous internal surveillance system while pretending to be at peace. Let us look at a realistic story involving a couple named Arthur and Valerie to see how these dangerous, silent patterns look in real life. Arthur was a highly respected civil engineer who took immense pride in his reputation for being an unshakable, silent rock. He had been married to Valerie for 6 years and provided a very stable, beautiful life for their household. One afternoon, Arthur discovered explicit messages on their shared home computer showing that Valerie had been unfaithful with a mutual friend. The shock was deep, but Arthur's immediate thought was to protect his pride. He vowed that he would never let Valerie or anyone else see him break down. He sat Valerie down, told her in a flat voice that he knew the truth, but then refused to discuss the emotional weight of the event. He did not tell his family, he did not seek any guidance. and he insisted on continuing their daily life under the same roof as if nothing had happened. Arthur thought this absolute silence made him look incredibly powerful. However, this total suppression led to a very negative outcome. Because Arthur was carrying a massive storm of unexpressed anger and grief, his subconscious mind began to look for dangerous outlets. He stopped sleeping, staying awake until 3 a.m. every night staring at the ceiling. To cope with the hidden anxiety, he secretly began drinking alcohol heavily after Valerie went to sleep. Within 6 months, the focus bleed ruined his professional life. He made massive mathematical errors on a major building project, which cost his firm a large contract and severely damaged his career. His marriage eventually collapsed anyway, but it ended with Arthur in a deep mental health crisis, physically exhausted and completely isolated from everyone who cared about him. Arthur failed because he mistook a rigid, silent mask for real psychological strength, failing to see that a wall that cannot bend will always break under a heavy storm. Have you ever seen a situation where a man tried so hard to look tough and unaffected after a life crisis that the hidden stress eventually ruined his health or his career? I invite you to think about this heavy human pattern and share your perspective in the comment section below. When we break down Arthur's experience from an analytical viewpoint, we find a third critical trend known as the identity erosion. Before a betrayal, a man usually knows exactly who he is, what he stands for, and where his life is going. But when he tries to use a fake version of stoicism to hide his pain, he begins to lose his connection to his own identity. He spends so much energy pretending to be fine that he forgets what his actual boundaries look like. He becomes a ghost inside his own home, moving through the daily routine with a sense of complete emptiness. Behavioral science suggests that this identity erosion happens because the mind cannot selectively numb emotions. When you try to completely block out your deep sadness and anger, you also block out your ability to feel joy, motivation, and passion for your life's mission. A high-value man learns from these patterns that true strength requires the courage to look at reality honestly, acknowledge the depth of a betrayal, and take decisive, logical steps to protect his future rather than hiding behind a wall of silent suffering. When you realize that hiding behind a fake wall of silence only drains your internal power, you stop pretending that a major betrayal has no impact on your mind. You begin to understand that an analytical man must treat his psychological health as a critical resource that needs active protection, rather than an empty space to be ignored. Now, we must examine the final behavioral trends that explain how a silent mental health crisis deepens over time, and how you can use conscious, disciplined actions to rebuild your internal stability without losing your composure. We will look at how the subconscious mind responds to long-term isolation, why a man must maintain an active outlet for his stress, and how choosing true logical clarity completely restores your power over your life. The fourth major behavioral trend that turns a betrayal into a long-term mental health crisis is a pattern known as the echo chamber of mind ruminating. In relationship psychology, we observe that when a man refuses to share his thoughts or take decisive action to change his environment, his brain creates an unending internal loop. Because he is acting completely calm on the outside, he has no way to release the mental energy building up within him. Behavioral data indicates that his mind will begin to obsessively analyze past dates, past arguments, and past conversations, searching for the exact moment the deception began. This internal loop acts like an invisible parasite on a man's focus. He might be sitting in a business meeting or driving his car, but his subconscious mind is entirely locked in the past, replaying the details of the betrayal over and over, which continuously damages his cognitive clarity and lowers his daily performance. If you're still locked in, you're seeing what most people miss. This channel is for thinkers, not reactors. Subscribe if that resonates. Share your perspective below. Now, let's get into the part most people overlook. The fifth and final behavioral trend to study within this dynamic is a pattern called the resentment bleed. When a man suppresses his raw emotions under a rigid mask of silence, the unexpressed pain does not disappear. It alters its form and turns into deep, toxic bitterness. Psychological trends show that because the man cannot safely express his hurt to the unfaithful partner without breaking his silent mask, his frustration begins to bleed into completely unrelated areas of his life. He may find himself snapping at his coworkers over minor details, losing his patience with his children, or developing a cynical view toward all human relationships. This behavioral tendency proves that extreme emotional suppression eventually turns a localized relationship problem into a total lifestyle infection, destroying a man's peace of mind and corrupting his interactions with the innocent people who populate his daily world. Let us look at a realistic story of positive growth involving a man named Malcolm to see how a person can handle this intense internal pressure with true discipline and strategic awareness. Malcolm was a highly successful software developer who possessed an incredibly disciplined, quiet personality. When he discovered that his long-term partner, Chloe, had been engaging in a deceptive connection behind his back, Malcolm felt an immediate urge to lock his emotions away and act like a robot. However, Malcolm understood the basics of behavioral science. He realized that trying to play the role of an unshakable machine would eventually destroy his professional focus and his mental health. Instead of starting a dramatic shouting match or hiding his face in shame, Malcolm applied a rule known as the controlled release. He immediately removed himself from the toxic environment by taking a 1-week leave of absence, moving into a private space where he could process the facts with total logic. He spoke openly with a licensed psychological counselor to sort through the emotional shock, ensuring his mind remained completely clear. Once he had emptied his system of the initial panic, Malcolm returned to the situation with an iron frame. He did not yell, he did not beg, and he did not pretend that nothing had happened. He simply met with Chloe in a neutral setting, presented the clear facts of her choices, and executed a clean, unemotional separation. He then poured his remaining energy into a demanding physical training program and a new business venture. By choosing to process his pain through structured logic and direct action rather than hiding it behind a fake show of toughness, Malcolm completely rewired his subconscious mind for growth. He protected his future, kept his professional reputation entirely intact, and emerged from the crisis as a far more grounded, powerful, and respected leader. How do you feel about the perspective that true strength is not about pretending you cannot be cut, but about having the absolute intelligence to heal the wound properly so you can continue to lead with power? Think about how you manage high-stress emotional events and share your perspective below. When you possess the psychological awareness to see that your internal peace is your highest responsibility, you stop using a mask of fake toughness to impress an unfaithful partner or a judgmental world. You no longer look at a betrayal as an event that defines your value as a man. Instead, you view it as an external test of your personal governance, your discipline, and your strategic clarity. Your ultimate duty to your future self is to face the cold reality of your situation without self-deception. Use clean, unemotional actions to remove toxic individuals from your path, and keep your personal vision locked firmly on your goals. By refusing to let hidden bitterness corrupt your mind and standing firmly on an unshakable baseline of self-respect, you ensure that you remain the absolute master of your destiny, walking forward into your next chapter with total power, true composure, and absolute dignity. If you're still here, you've already done something most people don't. You didn't settle for the headline. You stayed for the deeper layer. In a world that rewards quick reactions, taking the time to understand is becoming a rare skill. That's what this channel is about. Not taking sides, not chasing outrage, but looking beneath the surface to understand the patterns that shape people, relationships, and decisions. If you value conversations that make you think long after the video ends, subscribe and stay connected. And if something in today's discussion stood out to you, share it in the comments. Some of the best insights come from seeing how different people interpret the same idea. Keep questioning, keep learning, keep seeing beyond the obvious. I'll see you in the next one.